We should be.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Pelham. Everyone present will be given an opportunity to comment on applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. This public meeting has been called to satisfy the requirements of the Planning Act and Council bylaws. Notice of this meeting has been given by prepaid first-class mail to all persons listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 60 meters or 200 feet of the subject properties. In addition, a public notice sign has been posted on the lands. Agencies commenting on applications may request that certain conditions be imposed should an application be approved. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. The process for tonight, the purpose of the application and relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given an opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to speak. Please state your name and mailing address for the record. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Specific wording for conditions will be determined by the committee following the public portion of this hearing. All interested parties are invited to be present. Copies of decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request. There are colored forms for this purpose which are available on the back table. Any person, corporation, or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the local appeal body within 20 days of the decision for minor variances and within 20 days of the mailing of the decision for consent applications. I'll now introduce the hearing panel. To my far left is Mr. Don Cook. To my immediate left is Mr. Brian DeMyrtle. To my immediate right is the Assistant Secretary Treasurer, Holly Wilford, and to my far right is the Secretary Treasurer, Nancy Bizzato, and I'm the Chair, James Federico. Before we get started, does any member of this panel have a pecuniary interest in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act in any of the applications being considered at this hearing?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
And I have none. At this time, are there any requests for withdrawal or adjournment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we have received a request for adjournment for minor variance file A3/2019P, 245 Far Street, to allow the applicant time to satisfy the concerns of the Niagara region regarding drainage. If acceptable to the committee, I would request a motion in this regard.
I'll move, Mr. Chairman, that we agree with the adjournment.
Okay, do I have a seconder?
And I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, motion carries. We will adjourn that application.
Mr. Chair, if you could just ask if anyone in the audience is here with regard to that application.
I will do that. Is anyone in the audience here with regard to the application for Far Road? Yes. Yes. Okay. You're the agent? Okay. So the application's been withdrawn and... Right. Yeah, right. And so you are free and clear for the evening? Or, yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to double check, Mr. Chair, if there is anyone in the audience so that I make sure they get a copy of the new notice of hearing.
Oh, okay.
So that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Those are minutes. I just need to find my... Sorry, I messed up. Normally I have my agenda. Thank you. It's got your name on it. Okay. Okay, with that... Oh, I just got out over. I'll find it. All right. With that, we will move on to file A1 2019P for 1 Highway 20 West.
Committee of Adjustment hearing, Thursday, February 7th, 2019. Application.
No worries. Is there anyone here? Okay.
We're just going to ask the agent
Yes.
representing the application to step forward to the table here, please.
That's what I was getting at. No worries. I'm a little bit off at the moment too. We'll pull it in. Don't worry. We'll end it. Okay. Could you state your name and for the record?
Certainly. Craig Rowe with Upper Canada Consultants.
Okay. Thank you, Craig. And Ms. Wilford, if you could read the correspondence with this application.
File A1/2019P, 1 Highway 20 West. Excerpts from Planning Report. The subject land is located on the northwest corner of Highway 20 West, Regional Road 20, and Pelham Street, known municipally as 1 Highway 20 West. The minor variance application requests relief from Section 6.16A, minimum parking, to allow 7 parking stalls, whereas 18 are required. Section 19.3A, maximum gross floor area, GFA, used for residential to allow 75% of the GFA, whereas 50% is required. Section 19.3C, minimum landscaped amenity area to allow 0 meters squared, whereas 55 meters squared per dwelling unit is required. Section 20.2F3, minimum side yard abutting a street to allow 1.44 meters, whereas 3 meters is required. Section 20.3C, minimum front yard to allow 1 meter, whereas 3 meters is required. Section 20.3D, minimum rear yard to allow 3 meters, whereas 4 meters is required. Relief is sought to facilitate the construction of a 3-story mixed-use building consisting of 212 meters square of commercial space at grade with 6 residential properties above. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department, no comments. Public Works, no comments. Public, no comments have been received. Is the variance minor in nature? Reducing the minimum parking requirement is minor overall, considering the future proposed shared parking on town property, which will provide each apartment with 1 stall, plus 10 stalls to be shared amongst the commercial tenants and any residential visitors. Increasing the GFA for residential apartments from 50% to 75% is minor overall because ample commercial space exists at this property. Also, ground-level commercial space will be reinstated as part of the new development. Eliminating the landscaped amenity area requirement is minor overall given the downtown context. Increasing the maximum lot coverage to 40% to 42% is minor overall because little additional stormwater runoff will be induced as the majority of the subject lands were hard surfaced originally. Reducing the side yard setback to Park Lane is minor in nature given the urban context, which consists of many buildings located close to traveled streets and laneways. Reducing the front yard setback to Highway 20 is minor overall for several reasons, to that of reducing the Park Lane building setback. There are no safety concerns raised with regional or town engineering staff. Reducing the rear yard setback by 1 meter is overall minor, since downtown neighborhoods are commonly characterized by buildings with minimal setbacks. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? Reducing the minimum parking requirement is desirable for the development because it allows additional dwelling units to be provided, which add to the strained housing stock in downtown Fonthill. Increasing the residential GFA balance of 1 Highway 20 West is desirable for the property because it provides enduring resilience in terms of managing property, carrying costs, and vacancies with alternative rental income streams. Eliminating the landscaped amenity area requirement is desirable for the subject land because it allows for a compact, urban mixed-use building to be built without wasting scarce land supply for urban landscape treatments. Increasing the overall lot coverage is desirable for the use of the lands because the overhang will afford weather protection for the accessible parking stall and visiting commercial patrons, while also increasing the floor space of the building, thus increasing the land's value. Reducing the side yard setback to Park Lane is desirable for the subject lands because it facilitates the construction of an adequately sized and feasible 3-story mixed-use building, which is an appropriate redevelopment for downtown Fonthill. Reducing the front yard setback to Highway 20 is desirable for the subject land for the same reasons identified in reducing the Park Lane building setback. Reducing the rear yard setback by 1 meter is desirable because it provides additional building and living space while preserving surface level parking, particularly an accessible parking stall. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Reducing the minimum parking requirement does not conflict with official plan policies given the neighborhood context. Increasing the residential GFA balance maintains the purpose of the official plan because it will help diversify the land use mix and add housing supply downtown. Eliminating the landscape amenity area maintains the general intent of the official plan because intensification, redevelopment, and sustainability is a top priority of the downtown designation. Reducing the front yard setback to Highway 20 does not conflict with the official plan policies for the same reasons identified for the Park Lane building setback. No adverse impacts are anticipated. Increasing the overall lot coverage maintains the general intent of the official plan because the expanded building space helps facilitate the addition of 6 apartment dwelling units, which provides more housing opportunities downtown. Reducing the side yard setback to Park Lane maintains the general intent of the official plan because intensification, redevelopment, site functionability, and public safety are high priorities of the official plan policy. Reducing the rear yard setback by 1 meter does not conflict with the official plan because the development maintains sensitive to its surroundings and respects the heritage character of the neighborhood. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Reducing the minimum parking requirement does not conflict with the zoning bylaw because adequate off-street parking is still provided for the development in the immediate proximity. The proposed increase of the residential GFA does not compromise the general intent of the zoning bylaw because commercial space is maximized at grade due to the utilization of Park Lane for parking lot access. Eliminating the landscaped amenity area requirement maintains the general intent of the zoning bylaw because no adverse impacts are anticipated as a result of being in close proximity to other outdoor recreational areas. Reducing the side yard setback to Park Lane maintains the general intent of the zoning bylaw because adequate separation will still exist between the traveled portion of Park Lane and the building wall. Reducing the front yard setback to Highway 20 does not conflict with the zoning bylaw for the same reasons identified for the Park Lane building setback. No adverse impacts are anticipated and the pedestrian realm is expected to improve. Reducing the rear yard setback by 1 meter does not conflict with the zoning bylaw because adequate separation is maintained from the abutting building to the north. Planning staff is of the opinion that the application meets the 4 minor variance tests laid out by the Planning Act. The subject application is consistent with provincial policies, the regional official plan, and complies with the general intent of the town official plan and zoning bylaw. Planning staff recommend that the application file number A1/2019P be approved. The following conditions are suggested. There are no conditions requested for this application.
Thank you. So, it was Craig.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to comment on this application?
Yes, we had a couple slides prepared. I think our first point would be that we're certainly supportive of town staff's comments on this. Just to, in addition to that, not to be repetitive, I know that we dealt with a related file at the last committee meeting, which dealt with the provision of an easement at 1502 Pelham Street, which is the property just to the north of that. So that's the site for context, and easement that will allow us to park for additional cars to make up that part of that parking requirement. So could you just skip ahead? Maybe 1 or 2 there, Holly. Nope, sorry, just the one prior to that. Just wanted to give a little context about the building. So really, the reason for the variances has been through a collaborative conversation with town staff that we had through pre-consultation about what's the best place to put this building. The former building was tucked back very far. It had all the parking out in front of it, a lot of asphalt. So it was agreed upon that the best location for this building is to bring it up close to the street, consistent with other similar scale buildings in the downtown, and then tuck the parking away in the back. what can be seen on this, though, is that a portion of the property also includes Park Lane. So our client, Mr. Vanderween, who's here tonight, a portion of Park Lane, which is an important local road that provides access down to Marlene Street Stewart Park, is actually on his property. So he is, in fact, accepting some liability for people that are driving over this or walking across it. So we were faced with some encumbrances, and we thought that going forward, there may be some justification in asking for some parking relief due to the opportunities we have along Park Lane and possibly divesting ourselves of that portion of Park Lane back to the town of Pelham in exchange for some parking rights. And generally, in our opinion, if someone's going to this building, they're going to park in those spots anyways. It may be appropriate to formalize that arrangement and also provide that asset fully under municipal ownership so it can be maintained and considered safe. If you can just skip ahead a couple, it's probably just one more slide there, Holly. So this is just a general idea of the floor plate of the building, ground floor being to the right. So the 3 commercial units at grade. And then in the middle, that would be the second floor. You see that elongated part. That's the issue why we came back, is because it wasn't captured in our lot coverage previously. That's one of the units in the overhang with the accessible parking underneath. And then the 3rd floor, again, mimicking that same floor plate. And if you just skip one more there, Holly, if you could. These are just some of the different advantages. So it's a very attractive building, as we've outlined in our planning report. We feel it meets all of the tests of the urban design guidelines for downtown Font Hill. We think that it integrates well, and certainly it's going to contribute to the pedestrian experience out there. It also will, through our design, we've tucked that parking away and eliminated a little bit that automobile-oriented interface with it. And given some of the other investments that are going downtown, we think it fits in well with those as well. So I would be happy to answer any questions of the committee with regard to the application.
Okay. Actually, before we get to the members, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to comment on this application? Okay. Members, do we have any questions, comments, concerns?
No, I have none, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have major concerns with the minimum parking. To me, personally, 7 stalls versus 18, that's not minor. And from our previous variance, you're actually asking the town to provide you 6 parking stalls, which are not going to become available for the general public, I would assume. I'm sure that there will be an agreement with the town if this ever comes to fruition, but in reality, Mr. Chairman, I cannot agree with the first, the reduction in parking. Section 616A, minimum parking to allow 7 parking stalls where 18 is required. I feel that is not minor.
Okay, and
basically because the owner is unable to provide those stalls, he's relying on the town of Pelham and an adjacent owner to make up the difference. At the moment, what's your plan B?
Well, we've designed the building in accordance with the zoning as much as we can. Some of those setbacks are basically about a good building positioning that meets the urban design objectives of the town. You know, the desired built form out here is those mixed-use buildings that are 3 stories in height. Unfortunately, the automobile component of that, there's only a finite amount of room to provide that. As we've noted, we think we have a logical solution for this, which is, you know, we've secured that agreement with the neighbor to provide some of that additional parking. But we feel that it's a fair exchange for us to divest ourselves of Park Lane, which represents an issue, in exchange for the rights to some parking. That being said, we have completed a parking analysis, which is basically come to the conclusion that there's ample parking still available throughout the downtown. So from the residents' perspective, you have 6 residential units there, 7 parking spaces on site, an additional accessible parking space. You know, we're also subject to site plan, and we've had to do a transportation impact analysis as part of this as well, and figuring out how we're going to handle Park Lane and Highway 20. It's unfortunately, if we can't get the reduction in parking, it's effectively a project killer. And here we have a hole in downtown Font Hill, and we're trying to develop it and bring good built form, but I don't know how we achieve the objectives of the zoning, the official plan, for what's prescribed from those documents and meet the parking on that size parcel of land. Effectively, it's pretty close to impossible without the cost of the building versus the parking being able to provide it. It's not feasible from a development perspective. I'm not sure if the client, Mr. Van der Ween, has anything else to add to that.
That pretty much sums it up, yeah.
Would there be a possibility of getting an agreement with an adjacent neighbor who has parking? Like, could give you an extra 2 or 3 more stalls? 'Cause my big problem is, in reality, is we're giving up, possibly giving up parking stalls that are currently being used by the general public that may end up being permanently attached to the building or signed as reserved for. And that's the difficulty I have. It's the reduction for general public parking in the downtown. The downtown core of Pelham, parking is terrible. I don't care whether you're on Pelham Street. It's just not, it's not good, and I don't know how to fix it. But to me, the reduction from 18 stalls to 7 is not minor. But there's other things that come into play, so. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have to say.
Okay, can we go back a couple of slides, Holly, just to the site plan? And maybe it was there. Just as I was going through or listening, just as I was listening and processing what you were saying, there is some, can you explain again the exchange of what's going on here? There is some of Park Lane that's currently owned that will be given back to the
Do you mind
town?
if I?
You go ahead and point.
Okay.
That'll help.
So, as it stands right now, I think it's approximately 2 or 3 meters of the Park Lane right-of-way is on Mr. Van der Ween's property.
That line right, yeah, went over.
Right here. That line right there. Yeah, so this is our proposed property line after that said exchange. He owns up to here. So effectively, all of the traffic going to the park is trespassing against his property. So our proposed parking solution was that we would divest ourselves of Park Lane back to the municipality to ensure a legal, safe connection to the park. We've already, through easement, secured an additional 4 parking spaces, so I think it's important to note that it's 8 plus 4.
Right.
12, and that these parking spaces on the other side, making up part of the right-of-way, that those be, through an agreement, be established as contributing towards the required parking for this development. Our argument being that if you're going here, you're going to be parking in proximity anyway, signed or unsigned, you're logically going to be parking close to the building.
Right, so functionally, 6 plus 1 for the people that live there, and then for the people that would be coming to the commercial space, you know, some kind of reserved agreement or.
Reserve parking for the residents behind the building, of course.
Right.
But like other downtown businesses that don't have parking lots, they would be parking on street. There's still parking in front of the building to the west of this
Right.
as well. There's other opportunities. We're just seeking to formalize it. So in terms of, you know, not knowing a solution, we've weighed all the options out, and you know, it's very difficult to hit that required parking target and build the kind of building that's put forward in the zoning and the official plan. But we feel that this represents a logical solution, given that, you know, part of his property contains the town's road, but the town also has some land that could be strategic in parking. It's really kind of a
Right, yeah, and kind of put, I'm a little bit sympathetic to your cause because I'm also a downtown building owner not in Fonthill, and that's just it. The interaction of what is obviously public space and what is obviously private space is tricky. Quite a lot. I end up with a lot of people parking on my property because it looks like it's town's property kind of thing, and so in concept, I like the idea of formalizing an agreement, and it kind of puts the burdens in the right spot as far as I'm concerned, but that's my kind of general comment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, my general comment is that I'm really impressed with the problem solving and the creativity that you've managed to put forth with consultation with the town of Pelham from the standpoint of maintaining the developing this area and maintaining the integrity and the character of the area. So from my perspective, I think you've done a great job with that.
I just want to echo that because, I mean, it's absolutely that. I mean, it's part of our responsibility to, not our responsibility, but, you know, to develop sustainable land use, right? And make it financially viable and low cost and all of those good things. So, okay. Are we through our discussion?
I am, Mr. Chair, but I'm not sure whether that here is.
I'm very sympathetic to the developer. I understand what he wants to do. I think it's a good idea. What I don't like about it is the giving up of current public parking. And that's the problem I have. I realize that there is limited land area on your property. I realize there's limited land area within the general, along that side of Highway 20.
Go one more slide back. Where we've got the, there we are. So, I mean, practically, if I'm not seeing that incorrectly, okay, right, we've got the parking in the front and that's how we're satisfying, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's, you know, like, I understand what we're trying to do. I'd like maybe see a condition that there is an agreement reached between the town and.
Okay, well, can I put you on the spot, Curtis? Do we have any idea what, is there a pro forma agreement? Is there something in the works at the moment, or do we know what it would look like?
Through your chair, what we would anticipate happening after, if this were to get approved, the applicants would make the site plan control application based off of the site plan and with the approved variances in place. And at that point, as part of the site plan, we would recommend council accept a dedication of Park Lane. In exchange, there would be, by way of dedication of a reference plan conveying those parking spaces, this would be up to council as shared or exclusive for the exclusive use of 1 Highway 20 West. It is up to council. So,
Mr. Chairman, it's the word exclusive that bothers me more than anything.
I can, yeah.
See, I think the developer has enough parking on his property to satisfy his residents,
Right.
but he doesn't have enough parking on his property to satisfy his commercial.
Right. Which then, in a downtown context, and going back as
Yeah,
you know,
like-
the occupation of that building is I'm sure
Like we look at
people have been stashing cars there and going elsewhere for, right? Like,
yeah. I'm one of those people. Okay? For years, I parked at Crick's and gone to Claytor's.
Right.
Because Claytor's parking lot was full.
right.
So, is there lots of parking? Yes, we have all of this, but this is not conducive to a building that's here. And it's the exclusivity of those 4 or 8 stalls that bothers me more than anything. And I'm sorry, but that's like I said, if there was a way that the stalls that could be signed, like if there's nobody parking in them, your commercial people can park in behind the building, or there's still that ability to park in the, I guess it's 8 stalls on the
Well,
other side of Park Lane.
so-
I don't know but that's an issue that maybe could be worked out as part of the site plan.
And that's-
It's that exclusive, you used exclusive, and that's the problem that I have.
Well, and that's where now, you know, we're at 7 and 4 through the lease agreement. Or is it 7 and the accessible for, well, whatever. 7 and 4, right?
And then 1 accessible in addition to the 7 on site.
So-
accessible
so-
separate from the count.
So now we're at 7 and 4 is 11, right?
Yeah.
And then it's just those four
It's this group of four.
which would be,
Because we've already dealt with this group at the last meeting.
right. So, I mean, you're concerned about value, you know, there is a land exchange that's happening
Yes,
here.
and I recognize the land exchange is something that's very important to both
And I just wonder if,
town and, yeah.
and I just wonder if, you know, it does still have to go through council, right?
Yes.
So,
And that's why I'm hoping that in this minimum parking to allow 7 stalls, whereas a minimum of 18 stalls are required, is hereby granted, subject to council approval.
so would you be amenable to that, to a condition?
It all has to be approved
It
anyway.
all has to be approved by council in any event through the site plan agreement.
Right. Okay. So you're not opposed in principle, you just want some backstopping, which I think we have.
Yeah, I hope we
We
have.
already have that,
Right.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Nancy, don't we already have that? All this has to be approved.
Through you,
The
Mr.
council.
Chair, as Mr. Thompson explained, there is another process that will require council approval for the site plan component. And just so committee is aware, the condition, or not the condition, but the reason was drafted that states, subject to council approval, if approved by council, the minor variance for parking, if approved by council, is minor.
Okay.
So that is noted.
So that's, I'll give last call for comments. And with,
I have no more comments to make,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, but I am ready for a motion. If,
Okay.
Well,
I move that file A1 2019P on behalf of 1 Highway 20 West be approved. And we'll deal with each of the applications separately here. So the first one we'll deal with will be the 616A for the minimum parking, the subject of minimum parking, to allow 7 parking stalls, whereas the minimum of 18 parking stalls are usually required. And I move that that be granted. For the following reasons, the variance, in my consideration, is minor in nature, considering the future proposed shared parking on the town property, if, of course, as Don mentioned, it's approved by council. Secondly, the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained, and the official plan is maintained, and it is desirable for the appropriate development, as far as I'm concerned, for the use of the land, because it does allow for additional dwelling units to be provided there. The application also is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. No objections have been received from commenting agencies or abutting property owners. And I'd like you to note that we, as a committee, have considered all the written oral comments and agree with the minor variance report analysis. So we've looked at all that. And the above decision, of course, doesn't have any conditions at this point.
okay,
Mr. Chair, I wonder if the committee might consider if there is an interest in indicating as one of the reasons as well that there is a shared agreement in place for the 1, 2, 3, 4 parking stalls on the abutting property to the north? As, not as a condition, but as
in the reasons?
as in the reasons that the committee is aware of an agreement with that property owner?
Related to
Those.
these two?
That's
Those 4.
4.
Those two are on town property.
Not completely.
Not completely. I agree, not completely.
So once more, Mrs. Bizzato?
Just if you wanted to mention in the conditions that there are agreements in place for abutting parking to the north.
Yes.
Okay, yep.
Yes, I have no problem with that. Mr. Chair.
Okay. See, it's your motion.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, with that, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor? Okay, that's 2-4, one opposed. So that one's gonna carry.
Moving on to application for relief of section 19.3A.
Ryan,
Yeah,
we can do the rest
okay.
in block.
I don't think we need to do them separately, do we not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you can do them on block. The reasons are slightly different, but
Yeah.
you could cite the reasons as noted in the planning report unless you had any additional reasons.
No, I have no.
Okay.
That would be nice if we could.
It would.
I just expected that we had to deal with them separately.
You do have to sign them separately on the notice of
Yes,
decision.
They don't have to watch us read them all out.
No.
Basically, Mr. Chairman, I agree with the remaining variance applications, 19.3, 19.3C, 20.2C, lot coverage, 20.2 F3, minimum side yard, 1.44 is 3, application for relief of section 23.3C, minimum front yard, 1, and application for relief, section 23D, minimum rear yard to allow 3 meters if 4 is required. As per the planning report and reasons given in
Okay.
So that would be your motion.
my motion.
Your motion and said out loud that the Committee of Adjustment has considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meets the Planning Act test for a minor variance. That is,
All
okay.
those things.
All
those good
the standard
7 points.
Yeah.
got it. Okay, then, do I have a seconder? Mr. DeMyrtle, thank you. And so for those 6 remaining variances, let's put them to a vote. All in favor? Okay, 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
So that concludes our first one for 1 Highway 20 West. You can, thank you. From there, we will move on to file, if you're ready. Okay. We'll move on to file A2 2019P for 945 River Road. Is there anyone in, do we have a representative for this file? Okay, come on up, have a seat, state your name. I'll write down his last name this time.
My name's Christopher Turpko.
Turpo, okay.
Turpko, yes, sir. Tirpko, Turpko.
Okay. Ms. Wilford, if you could read the correspondence, please.
Application for minor variance, file A2/2019P, 945 River Road, excerpts from planning report. The subject land is located on the north side of River Road, lying west of Forest Street, known municipally as 945 River Road in the town of Pelham. The minor variance application requests relief from Section 7.7A, max accessory lot coverage, seeking 3%, whereas 1% is permitted, and Section 7.7D, max accessory building height, seeking 4.6 meters, whereas 3.7 meters is permitted. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department. All necessary permits are required for each building over 10 meters squared prior to the construction commencing. Public Works, no comments. Public, no comments have been received. Is the variance minor in nature? Increasing the accessory building lot coverage to 3% is minor overall given the ample amount of landscape open space available on the property, which allows for stormwater penetration, septic system purposes, and amenity area. Increasing the accessory building height to 4.6 meters is minor given the rural context. Adequate distance buffers the accessory building from nearby neighbors. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? The variance request to increase the accessory building height and lot coverage is desirable for the property as it allows for enhanced storage and use of the structure. No adverse impacts are anticipated on the surrounding lands. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? The proposed use of the building accessory to a single detached house is permitted in the good general agricultural designation of the official plan, and the policy does permit uses which are compatible with agriculture. The increase in accessory building height will not compromise the objective of the official plan. Increasing the accessory building lot coverage will not impede the private servicing capacity of the septic system and does not raise any issues with official plan policies. The variants are appropriate given the site's rural context and meets the general intent of the town official plan policies. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? The size of the proposed accessory building height to 4.6 meters is appropriate given the rural context. Ample amount of open space is available on the site for amenity area and storm drainage. The increase of accessory building lot coverage in the proposed location won't compromise the existing septic system's overall operation. Given this, both variances will not adversely impact the rural character of the area or the surrounding countryside and will not compromise the zoning bylaw intent. Planning staff is of the opinion that the application meets the 4 minor variance tests laid out by the Planning Act. The application is consistent with provincial policies, the original official plan, and conforms with the general intent of the town's official plan and zoning bylaw. Planning staff recommend that application file number A2/2019 be approved. The following conditions are suggested: that all necessary building permits must be obtained prior to construction commencing.
Thank you. Mr. Turpo, would you like to comment on your application?
No, I think it was pretty straightforward.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to comment on this application? Okay. Members, do we have any other comments?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I realize that I actually went out and visited the site, and I have really no problems with what's being proposed as far as the buildings being added, the pool shed or the new garage. What I did notice, though, is a neighbor immediately to the west has, through his lot grading, caused this property owner some drainage problems because his backyard appears to might be flooded. I don't believe that a revised lot grading plan is probably required for this particular property, but what's been done by his next door neighbor has detrimentally affected the drainage from his property, and I don't know how to rectify that. But with that, Mr. Chairman, I believe that this application should be granted, and I will so move that the application for file number A4-219-825 Canberra Road be granted. For application for relief is seeking.
River Road.
River Road, I'm sorry. I'm looking Canberra Road. I'm looking at the wrong one. River Road, here we go. Application for relief, section 7.7A, maximum accessory lot coverage to permit accessory lot coverage of 3%, whereas bylaw permits 1%, required is to be granted. And secondly, that application of relief, section 7.7D, maximum accessory building height to permit accessory building height of 4.6 meters, whereas the bylaw permits a maximum height of 3.7, also be granted. The variances are minor in nature, given the ample amounts of landscape open space and adequate buffer distances for the accessory building from nearby neighbors. The general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained in both variances. The intent of the official plan is maintained. The proposed is desirable for the appropriate development, land use, as allows enhanced storage structure, both the same. Fifthly, the application is granted without prejudice to any other application of the town of Pelham. No objections were received from commenting agencies or abutting property owners. Committee of Adjustment, we have considered all of the written and written comments. and agree with the minor variance report analysis recommendation. This application meets the planning test for the minor variance, and the applicant is aware that all setbacks, including those relating to septic system, will be maintained. The applicant is aware, okay, and the above decisions are subject to the following conditions: that all necessary building permits are required prior to construction commencing for the new addition, to the satisfaction to the chief building official. With that, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, sir. Do I have a seconder? Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Motion carries 3-0. Go get your permits.
Perfect.
Wait your waiting period, then go get your permits.
Okay, great. Thanks, folks.
This one was
That one was
deferred. That one was deferred.
Far as deferred.
Canberra
So
Road,
on to
right?
825 Canberra. We're gonna wait just a minute, having some technical issues. They both went out. So did they lose a connection?
We lost the connection here. Try it from down there. I can stand there. Let's try it from there. If you put it onto the council input. Podium input, sorry.
Pardon us, folks, we've lost our screens.
Try Plan B.
It's okay. Oh, sorry. Must be the laptop.
It's the laptop?
Must be the laptop.
Okay, I will
Let me just try
There.
something else.
Did it?
So if you go ahead and start, I will see if I can't get this figured out.
Okay, so we will move on. Far Street's done, so we're on to 825 Canberra Road. Is there an applicant? Is there, yes, sorry, yes, we're moving on to file A4 2019P 825 Canberra Road. Do we have a representative for this application? Please state your name for the record.
Dan DeVries.
Thank you, Mr. DeVries. Ms. Wilford, can we have the correspondence, please?
Yes. Application for minor variance, file A4/2019P 825 Canberra
sorry.
Road.
We're good. She's okay. She's on the right file. The screen is on the wrong one. We'll
Yes.
get there. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay. We'll let Nancy catch up. Perfect, thank you. The subject land is located on the north side of Canberra Road, lying west of Church Street, known municipally as 825 Canberra Road in the town of Pelham. The applicant is seeking permission pursuant to section 45(2)(a)(1) and 2 of the Planning Act to permit an extension of a legal nonconforming use, being a proposed agricultural farm building addition, whereas the bylaw permits residential use. The property has been used for agricultural purposes in excess of 100 years prior to the existence of the town's zoning bylaw. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department. A building permit will be required prior to construction commencing. Public Works. Grading around the proposed addition must be completed in such a way that runoff does not negatively impact adjacent properties. Public. No comments have been received. Section 452A of the Planning Act grants the powers to the Committee of Adjustment to allow for the enlargement or extension of an existing building which was lawfully used for the purpose on the day of the applicable zoning bylaw was passed, which would then prohibit such a use. The Town of Pelham Policy E2, Nonconforming Uses, states that it may be necessary and practical to allow the extension or enlargement of nonconforming uses through the granting of a minor variance. Policy E2.2 states that the Committee of Adjustment may, without an amendment to this plan, allow an extension to a nonconforming use and shall consider the following: the size of the extension in relation to the existing operation, whether the proposed extension is compatible with the character of the surrounding area, the characteristics of the existing use in relation to noise, vibration, fumes, dust, smoke, odor, lighting, and traffic, and to the degree to which any of these factors may be increased or decreased by the extension. Based on the proposed site plan, the extension would likely double the size of the existing agricultural barn. The agricultural building is located to the rear, north, of all the existing residential development along Canberra Road. No adverse impacts are anticipated for the surrounding urban residential uses, with the continued general nature of agricultural business being practiced. The proposed extension is compatible with the character of the area, and it is not anticipated that an increase in negative impact will be a result of the addition. The DeVries Fruit Farm is an active agricultural business, and they farm this property as well as others in the town. The size of this expansion is appropriate given their operation. Planning staff is of the opinion that the application satisfies the Planning Act. The subject application is consistent with provincial policies, the regional official plan, and complies with the general intent of the town official plan and zoning bylaw. Planning staff recommend that application file number for A4/2019P be approved. The following conditions are suggested: that all necessary building permits must be obtained prior to construction commencing.
Thank you. Mr. DeVries, would you care to comment on the application?
No, I think everything was explained properly.
Okay, thank you. Are there any audience members that wish to comment on this application? Sir, please come up to the microphone here, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Dan Ricker. I live at 557 Welland Road, just in the same community as Fenwick. And I'm just wondering what the purpose of this larger building was going to be used for. Is it chickens, or is it, I just don't know what the use or why that you have to expand your building, say more in the urban area rather than, are you going further away from the road or closer to the road?
The building is going to be attached to the existing structure.
And come closer to Canberra Road?
No,
It's going,
it's going to be to the east and to the north of the adjacent buildings.
and the use of it is going to be?
And it's a fruit farm. It's an active fruit farm.
Yes,
So it's just actually an extension of the existing barn for packing space and cooler storage.
okay. That's all.
There's no animals on the facility, like on the site at all.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
That's all my concern was just
Okay.
what the uses are and.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do we have any comments or questions?
I have none, Mr. Chair. It seems quite straightforward to me.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Greedy.
I really have no, I don't know why you're legal non-conforming use, to be quite honest, because you've been there forever. But anyway, that's the way the official plan is in the zoning bylaw, so I have no adverse comments to make relative to the application for relief seeking permission. Expand your farming building. Needless, legal non-conforming use. My only concern is that the building is not going to have any impact on the drainage to exist to the neighbors. And for that reason, whoever moves this, I would like a second condition, other than the building permits, that a drainage plan be prepared and submitted to the Director of Public Works and Engineering to his satisfaction to ensure that additional drainage coming off your new barn will not impact neighboring properties. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would move that file A 219, 825 Canberra Road, an application for relief seeking permission pursuant to section 45(2)(a) 1 and 2 of the Planning Act to permit an extension to a legal non-conforming use being proposed agricultural farm building addition, whereas the bylaw permits residential uses only. The property has been in use for agricultural purposes for over 100 years prior to the existence of the bylaw and the official plan of the town of Pelham, and as such has legal non-conforming status is hereby granted. The reasons for my making this recommendation is the application satisfies the Planning Act and Town Policy E2 non-conforming uses. There will be no adverse impacts are anticipated to the surrounding urban residential areas within the contained general nature of the agricultural business being practiced. The proposed expansion is compatible with the character of the area, particularly your farm. This application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. No objections have been received by the committee or commenting agencies or abutting property owners on this application. And second, and then lastly, that the Committee of Adjustment has considered written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report, analysis, and recommendation. This application meets the Planning Act test for minor variance. And once again, the above decision is subject to the following conditions: that all necessary building permits are required prior to construction commencing for the new addition to the satisfaction of the town's chief building official, and secondly, that a drainage plan be prepared for the lands being affected by the construction such that no impacts will be felt by existing neighbors, and the plan be submitted to the Director of Public Works and Engineering of the town of Pelham for his approval.
Okay, do I have a seconder?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay. And with that, we'll put that to a motion. All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. I also just like to comment that, you know, normally these are people with agricultural land coming to build residential properties, and it just tickles me a little bit that you've got to come because your farm's zoned residential. It's nice. So motion carries. You wait your appeal period, your 20 days, and apply for your permits. And
Just one comment is for the condition on the site grading and drainage. I did talk to the one neighbor to the east of the property. They have an existing water problem on the front of their property, which they've gone to the town about numerous times to have corrected, and it hasn't been corrected. And it is possible that a building that we're going to put up is going to just add to the existing problem that they've had. Is there any way that Public Works can, be part of fixing that problem to make it better for all the parties involved? Like, how do we, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not really
right.
My problem's there may not be a problem at all with what I'm doing, but
and that's more what the drainage, grading and drainage is there. It's just so then it's more almost insurance for you that no, we've got the plan done and we're not impacting this, right? Because I mean that is your requirement as a property owner, that you're not kicking water into somebody else's,
right?
That you're dealing with your drainage internally. So it's more that side that having that will help you.
It protects you.
This is more for your protection
Okay.
that you're doing it.
All right.
We know in the town of Pelham that oftentimes we have a few issues with drainage.
Yeah.
And my condition that I'm putting on you is basically you are dealing with the water coming off your property on your property.
Correct.
And that's really what I'm trying to do. And then if your neighbor has a problem, I have done my,
Correct.
basically your due diligence.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. No, that's good.
And I concur with Don on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. DeVries. There are no applications for consent. We do have minutes for approval, so that concludes our applications that we'll be receiving tonight. So we're just going to sit here and approve some minutes if you guys are welcome to stay, but you know, there's not going to be much more action, I guess, in short.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that the minutes for the meetings of December 4th and January the 8th be approved as prepared.
And I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
With that, let's put it to a vote. All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. December 4th and January 8th minutes are approved.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that the Committee of Adjustments down at Pelham adjourn.
And I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Well, you're really moving tonight.
When we get out of here, I feel supper's coming in.
Yeah, what? Your supper's ready? So early.
So, members, just so you're aware, we do have some folks in the